What's up, everybody? Coming into the next one, we have a brand new thing today. It's called an active recovery. This workout was originally kind of inspired by Chris Heria and his YouTube channel. So if you want to see the original workout, I did post it below in the cool down. So starting off, you have a little bit of a sit-up punch underneath the legs. So a little bit of a sit-up like crossover as you sit there. So that way you're making full sit-up at the top, nothing holding the legs down today, and you're going to hold with a little bit of that little oblique twist using those transverse abdominis abs, getting that rotation. So kind of implementing a sit-up and basically like a bicycle crunch all in one move as you're going through these little sit-up crossover punches, we'll call them, or crunch punches, rolling through. Today, working on intervals, so it's not a full minute. We're going to go 45 seconds, and then you have an active recovery movement, okay? So today, we're going to go with glute bridges. So we're just going to set up, plant the heels down, press the hips towards the sky. Very controlled, tap the hips, and drive straight up. Trying to keep all the tension in the glutes, the low back, the hamstrings, pushing all the way through. All that is connected through the core. Once you get 15 seconds, moving in. This is a little bit of a more challenging sit-up, trying to keep the feet down, find your balance, and your arms stay straight. Notice on this one how I'm not throwing my arms forward for momentum. You're keeping that overhead reach as much as you can. Same thing at the top, kind of get that control so you reach to the sky and you're not reaching in front. You can always make this a little bit easier on yourself and use momentum, or bend your arms. You can kind of bring them forward and then hold that sit-up at the top and then reach at the top, okay? Basically a no momentum sit-up, making it a very strict overhead reach rolling through. If you want to make it more of a challenge, grab a weight, hold that thing up overhead as Eric's trying to get a fist bump while Bailey's rolling through. So as you go through these, same thing, once you hit 45 seconds, plant the feet into the ground, go into those dynamic glute bridges. Control, steady, and keeping tension at all times, so we're not trying to relax too much at the bottom. Goal is just keep the body moving the entire time to kind of push through that lactic acid and learn how to recover with movement. Bicycle crunches, we've seen them all before, rotating through. Try and keep the shoulders up off the ground, and notice where my hand position is here. I'm not grabbing the back of the head and cranking on my neck. I am still holding tight and letting my abs do most of the work and my core, okay? So if your hands are kind of interlaced back behind your head or even grabbing on back behind the ears, be careful with how much pressure you pull on that, because that can put a little bit of tension on that upper neck, kind of working on that cervical spine area, okay? With these, some people go back and forth depending on what they want to do with bicycle crunches, whether you want the legs to extend, anything like that. As long as you're keeping the feet up off the ground in a nice controlled manner, working cyclically, that's all I'm kind of looking for in this one. You don't have to necessarily reach full leg extension. Sometimes that detracts from how many reps you can get rolling through everything, okay? Next up, after your active recovery, again for 15 seconds, going right back to it. There's no rep time in. This one, little brand new movement, not a brand new movement, excuse me, a little bit of a repeat traditional movement of these Russian twists. A couple ways to do it. I like to push my legs straight when I can. Puts way more tension on the upper quad and hip flexors. If you need to bend the knees, go ahead and bend the knees, but try and keep them tucked in tight together, okay? Squeezing the inner thighs, working on that adduction, okay? That connects that lower core, working in tight in that core in that midsection, okay? As many as you can. Always try and touch both hands to the floor, even if it's just fingertips, or if you have a weight, make sure you're getting that whole contact to the ground so you are working that entire range of motion and that entire twist variety when you do these. Going back in, active recovery movement. Whole point in this, like I said, is just to maintain as much tension as possible. Working on pushing lactic acid through the body with movement. So you're not just stopping and recovering. You're still moving and doing something. Next up, you have those leg raises. This one, try and keep the lower back tight against the floor. You notice on this one, I'm trying to minimize any gap that would be right in my low back above my hips. When you start to see we get tired, you're not as controlled, or you bring the feet down too much, that back starts to arch. So a couple options for this one. A, always bending the knees to shorten the lever, takes pressure off the lower abs and that low back. Second one, I don't necessarily like this, but you can put your hands underneath your lower back, okay? Not underneath your butt. You're not trying to help your abs. You're just trying to support that. Last option would be not bringing your feet all the way down, okay? So the lower your feet go, the more tension that goes up and the more pressure you have to create to keep that lower back tight and suction against the ground going through. So a couple options for everybody on that modification level as we're rolling through. Now, if you do go watch Chris's video before this one, he only does one round through. We are going to do multiple, okay? So make sure you're setting that one up. Plank hip dips, try and keep tension. Sometimes you're trying to go more range of motion. This one, not so much on this movement. Try and keep the abs tight, one straight line. You can always do this from the bottom knee as well, from like more of a kickstand or support position. And what I mean by that range of motion is that you do not have to touch the hip or your butt to the ground, okay? Just trying to maintain that side plank position, pressing up, right back down, so you're kind of keeping that pulse. This one's working more of that bottom leg abduction, so now you're pushing out away from the legs rather than sucking them in tight, okay? So that works both sides. Now you're getting that adduction and abduction balance through the core. And then a lot of times we've been working on a lot of twisting motion, so always wanting to put in that lateral. So there's 3 planes of motion, right? You have frontal plane, and then you have that transverse plane, which is working in, and then you have that lateral plane, right? So make sure you're working through all 3 ranges, working on all ways that the body can move, okay? No matter what joint or what position the body's in, you always have 3 potential movement options. Whether you rotate, you go forward, or you go forward to back, or side to side. Same thing on this other side, just trying to keep everything even. Goal is to just try and match it up, trying to keep the feet tight together. If you do want a challenge on this one, you can always do it from a single leg position. So rather than keeping the feet tight together like I am, you can pick up your top leg, so that way you don't have that added support of that top leg pushing against either side, so you can make it a little bit of a challenge. If the elbow does bug you, feel free to go from the hand. Works kind of the same way. You just won't have the same range of motion going all the way down that you would on the elbow to get closer to the floor. Works the same way. Angles don't change too much as you go through it. You're still working the same muscle groups pushing through. Next up, finishing today, this one, we got those little bit of a plank jack into like a double leg mountain climber, okay? So you're going to kick your feet, starting to push up position, feet go out, in, right back up, knees towards the elbows, and knees come up towards the chest. As you kick back to your, let's say, push up or plank position, you should be trying to keep the hips in line with the shoulders, okay? A lot of people may not get the full extension. Notice how I kind of pause there. I'm getting my feet back behind me, and you're not leaving that butt way up in the air as you do this one. Goal is to just kind of bounce through as quickly as you can. It's like a dynamic plank, right? You're always keeping the feet moving. Pressure's always on the hands. Notice how my shoulders don't necessarily move too much. I'm kind of anchoring my body in that position. Once you get through, here we go. Going through an active recovery, and this will be halfway through. We are going to go back and do everything again as we roll through this. So again, 45 seconds of work today, 15 seconds of active recovery glute bridges the entire time as you roll through. So now going back to the top, you have that little alternating crossover punch, trying to lift the leg, and the hand should go underneath the knee. Right, so you're getting that whole rotation, get that punch, that little bit of a hold at the top as you're twisting and reaching underneath. So it adds all those planes moving in together today. So we're getting all portion of the abs working through the core, everything as you work through this one. So going through that second round, just try and push yourself as much as you can. I know we're tired. We've already been doing this for over 8 minutes, so keep pushing through, everybody. Every rep from this point on is like frosting on the cake, right? We've already pretty much baked the whole thing. The finished product is pretty much there. Let's just put the final touches on it, okay? Push yourself, get through each set as much as you possibly can. It's going to hurt. Your body doesn't know the difference between 5 reps and 6 reps, okay? So your goal is mentally to always try and push to that 6th rep each time, whatever that number might be for you, right? So coming back again, we have those static sit-ups, right? Keeping the hands extended up overhead. Some people call them like a sit up with straight arm sit up. Some people call them like that reach to the sky, whatever it might be for you. You can kind of title it your own, but we all know what that means. Keeping the heels planted down, lock it down, a no momentum sit up best you can. When you start to get tired, momentum is going to happen, and that's fine, but just keep yourself to a standard, right? Try not to use too much. Make sure your shoulders are touching the ground. Make sure you're getting all the way to the top and you're holding. Don't just reach up and go right back down just because you can't make it all the way. Wait for a second. Make sure you're getting quality reps, even though you are pushing yourself to the limit here. Yep, maintaining core tension the entire time, even through this new active recovery exercise is new probably for most of us, right? You think when you rest, okay, I'm just going to stop, right? Well, if you can make your body still work by staying active, you're still burning calories, you're still doing work. So if you teach your body to recover with movement, think about how much stronger you're going to be, how much more efficient you can be with those movements. Like if you were running, right? Let's say you're running, and rather than just stopping to breathe, you just slow down a little bit. What most people do, or they walk, think about just trying to make that recovery effort a little bit faster. So still kind of making ground in that positive direction towards the finish line, rather than just stopping, be like, oh my God, no, I just can't do it anymore. No, try and keep yourself still moving so you're still always gaining ground. That's the point of these active recovery moves. Teach your body to recover with movement, okay? So you're getting pretty close to that halfway point, almost through week number 3. And that's the whole point of this, is to kind of teach your body how to recover with movement. So coming back in, Russian twist. One thing, especially when I start to really kind of break down and get tired, I pick a number. Just pick a number in my head. Doesn't matter what it is, 8, 9, 10, 4. Just do that number, rest a little bit, and then challenge yourself to go back and repeat that number. Rather than just going for a time or anything like that, challenge yourself to hold yourself accountable to a certain number. Tens work really, really well. Hit 10 reps, whatever that means for you. Me, I tend to count my reps every other. So these Russian twists, when I go left, right, that's 1. So I just count one side. So I'd be like 2, 3, 4, and so on, okay? So when I move mine, that's what I really try and challenge myself to do. So that way I'm really getting the benefit of actually doing double reps, but in my mind mentally, I'm only counting every other. So it really feels like I'm only doing 1. It's always about those little tricks you can play with in your head mentally. Just keep going. On these bicycles, especially when you get tired, that distance from that leg to that elbow starts to get a little bit further. Your goal is to close that gap. On every single rep, every single twist, your goal is to get that elbow to touch your leg, okay? So that means you may have to pull your knees up a little bit higher. You may have to crunch a little bit harder just to get that touch or get as close as you possibly can. So keep that in mind, that gap between the knee and elbow is what you're trying to close on these bicycles the whole time. Still keeping the shoulder up off the ground, head up, keeping the feet close to the floor. If that low back starts to arch and rise up, don't be afraid to start picking the feet up higher and keep going, okay? Pick the feet up maybe to inch or 2 off the ground. Feel like that works for you. If it's still kind of painful, getting tight, and you just can't hold your feet there, go a little bit higher until you get to that point where you can stabilize and keep the low back down as you roll through. So side planks each side with that hip dip, hip tap variety. If you were to see yourself from the side view, so either from the top or the bottom, think about trying to make a straight line. When you start to get tired, your butt starts to go back, start to kind of rotate, chest down or shoulder towards the floor. So make sure you're staying in one really tight straight line from your head, through your hips, through your knees, and all the way down to that anchor point of the feet. Don't neglect to also use your hand on this one. My hand, even though I am making a fist, I'm pushing my hand and wrist against the floor for stability. More points of contact that you can have on the ground, the better you're going to have, the more space you're going to have. If you need to modify that side plank, like I said before, you can always put that knee down on the floor. You can also take your top hand and push it down on your bottom hand or wrist. I don't necessarily like on the ground because then that really kind of stimulates, I'm going to have another point of contact or it shows you that it's okay to kind of rotate and face the ground. So to take that other hand, place it on your wrist so it's not touching the ground, but then you still have that added benefit of you're still in the same position. You have the same points of contact that anybody else would on a side plank, and the carryover and transitions a little bit better, okay? And then where you can roll through. Same thing works if you're doing it from the knee. Same thing if you need to push, that shoulder starts to get tired, or that lat, chest, whatever might be working out there starts to kind of break down. Take that top hand, place it on that hand, and keep going. All right, coming in. Last final movement after this recovery move. 15 seconds of these glute bridges. And then in your mind, you're kind of like taking a couple deep breaths. Everything's relaxing, recovering. You're coming in your last interval, last one. Just try and put everything you can into it. You have nothing left today. It's just to push through for the next 45 seconds. Don't let yourself stop. Just roll through this dynamic plank jack and then the feet up, in and out, right? So you're working plank jack into that dual leg mountain climber, back and forth. It's almost like you're doing like the worst part of the burpee, bringing the feet up underneath you is what everybody hates. When I do these personally, one thing that I think about doing is bring my knees straight to my elbows and then tap my heels to the ground, okay? So if I'm thinking about if I'm going to do a burpee, if I want to stand up out of it, I want to get my heels down on the ground and kind of drop into a squat. So I think about, okay, heels got to hit the floor first, and then I can kind of get my feet up. As I get tired, you can kind of see where I only touch my toes. That's where I'm not kind of pulling those knees up as far. My abs are getting tired, and they get tight at that point. So last one, finishing with these glute bridges with this last active recovery, 15 seconds. And you guys are done today. Good work, everybody. You made it. You're done in 4, 3, 2, 1, and rest. There you go. Week 3 is nearly finished, everybody. You're almost at that halfway point. I know there's a lot of good results out there, so keep pushing. Keep challenging yourself.